Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, we'll get started. But before we do, for the few people that come on time, the plan is, inshallah, we'll start with, like usual, we'll start off with tilawah of the Quran, and then some recitation as far as poetry in honor of the martyrs of Karbala and Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And then about 6:45 we'll make Asr, or somewhere in there, inshallah. After which will be a little bit of recitation, and then the bayan, and then salam, and then food after Maghrib after salam, and then food, inshallah. So I'm going to ask Yusuf to come and recite a few verses of the Quran for us, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فاذكروني أذكركم واشكروا لي ولا تكفرون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة إن الله مع الصابرين. ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون. ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون. صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakallah khair. These are verses of Surah Baqarah, verses 152 through 157, and the rough meaning of the four verses: فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرُكُمْ وَاشْكُرُوا لِي وَلَا تَكْفُرُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that remember me and I will remember you, and be thankful and do not do kufr. So the opposite of thankfulness is kufr. And then Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ista'inu bis-sabri was-salah inna Allaha ma'as-sabirin. O you who believe, seek help through patience and salat. And indeed Allah is with those who are patient. ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون. And do not say about those who have been slain in the way of Allah that they are dead. Indeed they are alive, but you don't perceive it. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. And indeed you will be tested with something of fear and hunger and loss of wealth and loss of your life and your offspring. And glad tidings to those who are patient. الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. These are those who, when calamity or difficulty strikes them, they say, indeed we are from Allah, and to Allah we return. أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُهْتَدُونَ. Those upon whom Allah's salam, His peace and His mercy descend. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُهْتَدُونَ. And these are the ones, can be translated two ways. These are the ones who are rightly guided. But the other thing that's being said here is these are the ones who guide. These are the ones who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed, as your guide. So these are the verses. Inshallah, we'll go over some of those if we have a little bit more later on if we have time. I'm going to ask Muhsin to come and recite for us, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Everybody read the Sharif. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. Mere Nana Nabi, Mere Ma Sayyada, Mere Baba Ali, Mera Bhai Hasan, Hami hai Panjatan, Meri kya hai khata, Meri kya hai khata, mujh pe kyun banne karte ho pani, kya Muhammad ka pyara nahi hu, mujh pe kyun banne karte ho pani, kya Muhammad ka pyara nahi hu, kya main Zahra ka jaya nahi hu, kya main Zahra ka jaya nahi hu, kya Nabi ka نواسا نہیں ہوں, مجھ پہ کیوں بندے کرتے ہو پانی, کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہوں. میرے نانا نے کلمہ سکھایا اور قرآن تم کو سنایا, میرے نانا نے کلمہ سکھایا اور قرآن تم کو سنایا, کیا میں نانا کا سایہ نہیں ہوں, کیا میں نانا کا سایہ نہیں ہوں, کیا نبی کا نواسا نہیں ہوں, مجھ پہ کیوں بندے کرتے ہو پانی, کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہوں. وہ مدینہ جہاں میرا گھر ہے اور مسجد میں اس کا قدر ہے, وہ مدینہ جہاں میرا گھر ہے اور مسجد میں اس کا قدر ہے, کیا میں اس گھر میں کھیلا نہیں ہوں, کیا میں اس گھر میں کھیلا نہیں ہوں, کیا نبی کا نواسا نہیں ہوں, مجھ پہ کیوں بندے کرتے ہو پانی, کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہوں. چکیاں پیس کر مان پالا, مجھ کو نانا نے جھولا جھلایا, چکیاں پیس کر مان پالا, مجھ کو نانا نے جھولا جھلایا. اپنا بچپن میں پھولا نہیں ہوں, اپنا بچپن میں پھولا نہیں ہوں, کہ نبی کا نواسا نہیں ہوں, مجھ پہ کیوں بند کرتے ہو پانی, کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہوں. کملی والے کے لب چومتا تھا, کتنا پیارا میرا بچپنا تھا, کملی والے کے لب چومتا تھا, کتنا پیارا میرا بچپنا تھا, کیا میں ان کا دلاڑا نہیں ہوں, کیا میں ان کا دلاڑا نہیں ہوں, کیا نبی کا نواسا نہیں ہوں, مجھ پہ کیوں بندے کرتے ہو پانی, کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہوں. میں جو پانی کبھی مانگتا تھا, کیوں تڑپتی تھی ماں, اب میں سمجھا, میں जो पानी कभी मांगता था क्यों तड़पती थी मैं अब मैं समझा पासास करके जाता नहीं हूँ पासास करके जाता नहीं हूँ क्या नबी का नवाजा नहीं हूँ मुझ पे क्यों बंद करते हो पानी क्या मोहम्मद का प्यारा नहीं हूँ मैं जो चाहूँ बरस जाए बादल खून में डूबा नजर आए मक्तल मैं जो चाहूँ बरस जाए बादल खून में डूबा नजर आए मक्तल जंग करने में आया नहीं हूँ जंग करने में आया नहीं हूँ क्या नबी का नवाजा नहीं हूँ मैं फिर क्यों बंद करते हो पानी क्या मोहम्मद का प्यारा नहीं हूँ एक सदा तेरे रहनो सरवर कह रहे थे हुसैन बिन हैदर एक सदा तेरे रहनो सरवर कह रहे थे हुसैन बिन हैदर क्या मैं मेहमान आया नहीं हूँ क्या मैं मेहमान आया नहीं हूँ क्या नबी का नवाजा नहीं हूँ मुझ में क्यों बंद करते हो पानी क्या मोहम्मद का प्यारा नहीं हूँ क्या मैं जहरा का जाया नहीं हूँ क्या मैं जहरा का जाया नहीं हूँ क्या नबी का नवाजा नहीं हूँ मुझ में क्यों बंद करते हो पानी क्या मोहम्मद का प्यारा नहीं हूँ मुझ में क्यों बंद करते हो पानी क्या मोहम्मद का प्यारा नहीं हूँ मुझ में क्यों बंद करते हो पानी क्या मोहम्मद का प्यारा नहीं हूँ
And so, Jazakallah khair. In this poetry, the poet is speaking kind of from the perspective of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And some of the things that he mentions in the poetry are things that Imam Hussein alayhi salam had actually mentioned to the forces of Yazid when they had come. In the poem itself, the basis of the poem is that, am I not the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And why do you stop the water from us? Because by the end of the 7th of Muharram, the Imam Hussein Islam and those with him arrived in Karbala on the 2nd of Muharram. And so by the end of the 7th, they had run out of supplies. And on the 8th is when the orders were given that they should not be allowed to get any water from the Euphrates. So this is basically the basis of this poem. And in the poem, the poet, he, here again speaking from the perspective of Imam Hussein Islam, he says, am I not the grandson? My grandfather is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. My mother is Sayyida, Sayyida Kainat. She is the leader of all of the women of Jannah. And we forget that in Jannah there will also be the wives of the prophets and the mothers of other prophets and the mother of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the daughters of other prophets. But Fatima salamullah alayha will be the leader of them all. So he says, my mother is Sayyida. My father is Haidar. Haidar is lion. And Ali is Haidar Karrar. And the one when he goes into battle, he doesn't back up. Constantly pushing forward. And my brother is Hassan. Hassan Mujtaba. And so this is his lineage. And it's, and here, like we say in English, when we talk about somebody who's very close to, in resemblance to their forefathers, say the apple doesn't fall from the tree, right? And of course, we see other people who the apple falls and it rolls far, far away. But in this case, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not allow these apples to even fall from the tree. They are still attached to the tree. But again, the poet, he keeps asking, and again, from the perspective of Imam Hussein Islam, that am I not the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Why do you stop the water on us? And just a very quick incident that happened a few years before Karbala. Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu used to make a dua that, oh Allah, do not allow me to see the kingdom of the boy, and do not allow me to see the year 60. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted his dua. He passed in the year 59. And when he was on his deathbed, Marwan bin Hakam, who was at that time the governor of Medina, well known for his animosity against Ahlul Bayt, well known for cursing Ali, as part of the Jummah khutbah. And his history is long, but we won't get into that. But he comes to Abu Huraira, and he says to him, he says, we have loved everything about you, except your love of Hassan and Hussein. And this was enough for a man who's on his deathbed, taking his last breaths, who cannot, who can barely move, much less do anything else. This, statement of Marwan's was enough for Abu Huraira to sit up. And then he gives the incident that, one time we were on an expedition with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha was with us in this expedition in her hodaj. The women would travel in the box on the camel. And there was crying coming from the hodaj. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he stops the army, and he goes to the hodaj of his daughter, Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha, and he asks her, he says, why are my sons crying? And she said, Ya Rasulullah, they're thirsty and there's nothing to drink. So now Rasulullah, he asked the whole army, he says, does anyone have anything to drink? And Abu Huraira says that we were the ones every one of us wanted to be the one who gave him something. And no one had anything. We were all out. There was no water, nothing. And when there's nothing, then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says to his daughter, he says, give me my son. And Abu Huraira says that we saw the blessed hands of Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha come out with the Imam Hassan alayhi salam in her arms, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam takes him and places his tongue in his mouth. And Imam Hassan alayhi salam suckled until he was satisfied. And he hands him back and he says, give me my other son. And the same thing. And then Abu Huraira, he asked Marwan, he says, how can I not love those like this? Anyone who's going to love Rasulullah will love them. And anyone who has animosity against them, their animosity in reality is against Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm going to ask Hasib to come and recite for us, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Everyone please recite the Rashid. يا سيدي ارحم لنا يا سيدي ارحم لنا يا سيدي ارحم لنا يا سيدي ارحم لنا إن التياره الصبا إن التياره الصبا يوما إلى أرض الحرم بلغ سلامي روضة بلغ سلامي روضة فيها النبي المحترم الله 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 ما وجهه شمس الضحى من قده بدر الدجى من ذاته نور الهدى من كفه بحر الهمم يا سيدي ارحم لنا 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 أكبادنا مجروحة من سيف هجر مصطفى طوبى لأهل بلدة فيها النبي المحتشم يا سيدي ارحم لنا 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 يا رحمة للعالمين يا رحمة للعالمين أدرك لي زين العابدين محبوس أيدي الظالمين في الموكب والمزدهم يا رحمة للعالمين يا رحمة للعالمين أنت الشفيع المذنبين أكرم لنا يوم الحزين فضلا وجودا وللكرام يا سيدي ارحم لنا 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 إن الدياره الصبا يوما إلى أرض الهرم بلغ سلامي روضة بلغ سلامي روضة فيها النبي المحترم الله 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 الله
Jazakallah khair. This was actually recited by Imam Zain al-Abidin, and Imam Zain al-Abidin, whose actual name is Ali, he is the son of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He's the only adult male survivor of Karbala, and he was reciting this as they were taking them in chains and shackles, from Kufa to Damascus, addressing Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Sayyidi, O my master, Irham lana, look upon me with your mercy, and also asking, that the wind, when it goes to give his salam to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, at the Rawda of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We ask Jafar to come and recite for us as well, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Everybody please recite Durud Sharif. مرضی پہ خداوند کے سر اپنا کتانا آسان کہاں ہے، آسان کہاں ہے، امت کے لیے اپنا ہی گھر بار لٹانا آسان کہاں ہے، آسان کہاں ہے۔ کیسے ہو بیاں ہم سے فضیلت حسین کی، کیسے ہو بیاں ہم سے فضیلت حسین کی، پھولا پھلا ہے دین بدولت حسین کی، پھولا پھلا ہے دین بدولت حسین کی، نہضے کے بلندی پہ بھی قرآن سنانا آسان کہاں ہے، آسان کہاں ہے، مرضی پہ خدا وند کے سر اپنا کتانا آسان کہاں ہے، آسان کہاں ہے، دین رسول پاک کو چمکا گئے حسین، دین رسول پاک کو چمکا گئے حسین، کہتے ہیں کس کو صبر یہ بتلا گئے حسین، کہتے ہیں کس کو صبر یہ بتلا گئے حسین، اپنے ہی جوان بیٹ کی میت کو اٹھانا آسان کہاں ہے، آسان کہاں ہے، امت کے لیے اپنا ہی گھر بار لٹانا آسان کہاں ہے، آسان کہاں ہے، تاریخ کربلا کی کرے کس طرح رقم، تاریخ کربلا کی کرے کس طرح رقم، آل نبی پہ ڈھائے گئے ایک سے ایک ستم، آل نبی پہ ڈھائے گئے ایک سے ایک ستم، 6 ماہ کے فرزند کا پانی بھی نہ پانا آسان کہاں ہے، آسان کہاں ہے، مرضی پہ خدا وند کے سر اپنا کتانا آسان کہاں ہے، آسان کہاں ہے، تنہا تھے مگر جنگ میں باطل پہ چھا گئے، تنہا تھے مگر جنگ میں باطل پہ چھا گئے، وعدہ جو کیا نانس کر کے دکھا گئے وعدہ جو کیا نانس کر کے دکھا گئے بچپن میں کیے وعدے کو کربل میں نبھانا آسان کہاں ہے آسان کہاں ہے امت کے لیے اپنا ہی گھر بار لٹانا آسان کہاں ہے آسان کہاں ہے ابن علی پہ شمر نے ایسا ستم کیا ابن علی پہ شمر نے ایسا ستم کیا وقت نماز حلق پہ خنجر چلا دیا وقت نماز حلق پہ خنجر چلا دیا اس حال میں بھی سر کو نہ سجدے سے اٹھانا آسان کہاں ہے آسان کہاں ہے مرضی پہ خداوند کے سر اپنا کٹانا آسان کہاں ہے آسان کہاں ہے اشفا کے کوفہ والوں کو کچھ رحم نہ آیا اشفا کے کوفہ والوں کو کچھ رحم نہ آیا زہرا کے لادلے کو جو اس طرح ستایا زہرا کے لادلے کو جو اس طرح ستایا اپنے زباں پہ پھر بھی کوئی شکوہ نہ لانا آسان کہاں ہے آسان کہاں ہے مرضی پہ خداوند کے سر اپنا کٹانا آسان کہاں ہے آسان کہاں ہے امت کے لیے اپنا ہی گھر بار لٹانا آسان کہاں ہے آسان کہاں ہے
جزاک اللہ خیر
to these things.
In this poem, the poet, he says that to willingly, allow your head to be cut, this is not something that's easy. And to sacrifice your whole family, he's doing this all for the benefit of the ummah, so that Islam reaches us, in its pure form, not in its political form that the governments and the rulers want. And so, the poet, he keeps saying that this is not something easy, and then he says that, he does this, Imam Hussein al-Islam does all of this without any hesitation, picking up the body of your son, burying Imam Ali Asghar. He's the only one that he buried. Everyone else he placed beside the tent. Again, this is not easy. And he's not doing this so that he for his own benefit. His status doesn't change. We're allowed to see a glimpse into his status, but his status doesn't change. Hussein is Hussein. So, he's doing this all for the ummah, because of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's love for the ummah, and for the protection of the deen, that his grandfather brought. And so that's, basically what the poet is talking about. And there are a lot of other details that he gives. We may cover some of those later, inshallah. But inshallah, we'll stop or take a break and make asr. And as we're making asr, there are two times, as far as times of day, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by in the Quran. Wal Fajr and Wal Asr. He doesn't swear by Isha, he doesn't swear by Maghrib or Dhuhr. Only these two. Why? What distinguishes these times from any other time? Fajr is the time of the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Asr is the time of the martyrdom of Imam Hussein al-Islam in Sajda. So these two events have distinguished these two times. So inshallah, brother will give the adhan and then we'll make asr, inshallah.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
sunnah and then we'll make fard, inshallah.
محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. Straighten your rows, leaving no gaps, inshallah.
Maybe you guys slide over that one. Slide over that way so if someone comes.
الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر السلام عليكم ورحمة الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم عليه. اللهم انت السلام ومنك السلام تبارك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا ربنا تقبل دعاءنا ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وآله وأصحابه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, we'll continue with the program. I'm going to invite Brother Saeed Hunafa to come and recite for us. Brother Saeed, we've known you since 80. Huh? Okay. Late 80s, early 90s, somewhere in there. Yeah. He had just gotten back from studying with the Sheikh and other Shuyukh, and my father met him and had a conversation, and lines matched up. So alhamdulillah, things have been smooth ever since. Alhamdulillah. So I'm going to ask him to come and recite for us, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Let me just say that this is my family. Uncle Akil uncle is my uncle, indeed, and in fact, he is my uncle. So, alhamdulillah, I've learned quite a bit from him, in conjunction with what I've learned from my sheikh, and I learned quite a bit from Mawlana Akil Sahib. It's a blessed family to be attached to. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها، لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به، واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا، أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد، لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر، ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق، ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب، ومن شر النفاثات في العقد، ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر، ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. صدق الله خالقنا العظيم، وبلغنا رسوله النبي الكريم، ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى أزواج سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى ذرية سيدنا ومولانا محمد، وبارك وسلم عليك جزاكم الله خير.
Jazakallah khair. Before I get started, Brother Basil, unfortunately, time catches up with us all, and his legs have gotten very weak to where sometimes he feels like they'll give out from underneath him, so he hasn't been able to come. But he sent his salam. And there's Brother Rashad from Warner Robins, who was planning on coming but had car issues, so he also sent his salam. And I'm sure there are some other people who told me something to say salam, so whoever I'm forgetting, salam from everybody, inshallah. نحمده ونصلي على رسول النبي الكريم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. قال الله تعالى في شان حبيبي إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد وبارك وسلم عليه صلاة وسلاما عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. Before I start talking about the topic, I want to kind of preface some things that we should always keep in mind. A lot of times, there's certain rules that are basic rules. It goes in every field. But unfortunately, especially in Islam, we'll be talking about something and we'll accept something or we'll say something without realizing that it violates certain very basic rules. And of course, the most basic rule of Islam is La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When we accept Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as Rasulullah, part of accepting him as Rasulullah is to accept him also as Khair Khalqillah, that he is the best creation of Allah. And there's no limitations here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't put any limitations on his bestness, if that's a word. He is the best in everything. His knowledge, his authority, physically, mentally, spiritually, in every aspect of everything, he is best. Which then would also make sense that whatever is associated with him also becomes the best. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refer to us in the Quran? Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrajat lin-nas, that we have made you the best of nations for the people. If you look at the rest of the verse, it simply says ta'muruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhauna 'anil munkar wa tu'minuna billah, that you enjoin what is good and you forbid what's evil and you believe in Allah. Well, even the previous nations did that part. So what makes us the best? Because we're connected with him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because we are his ummah. The Quran is the best of books. Somebody say, well, it's kalamullah, it's the word of Allah, which is true. But the Torah that was revealed to Musa al-Islam was also kalamullah. The Injil that was revealed to Isa al-Islam was also kalamullah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not choose to preserve them. He has preserved the Quran. And it's the best of books. Because it is the book that was revealed to him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Abdul Rahman. So the same way, why are the Sahaba of Rasulullah considered the best of companions? Other, prophets had their companions. We know in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Asif bin Barkhia, not by name, the companion of Sulaiman al-Islam who brought the takht, or the throne of Bilqis, before even the blink of an eye. And yet that ummah is not considered the best of nations. And that companionship is not the best of companionships. Again, why are the Sahaba of Rasulullah the best of companions of any prophet? Because they are his sallallahu alaihi wasallam's companions. And so, by the same token, who would be the best of families other than his sallallahu alaihi wasallam's family? The companions, the Sahaba, were made specially for him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ahlul Bayt were made specially for him, from him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is a distinction there. So, in the same token, when we look at another thing to remember is that everything Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, everything without exception is revelation. And there are various narrations where the companions asked certain things, or certain things were done, and he said to them, I am not subject to my emotions like you are subject to your emotions, that you become emotional and you say things that are inappropriate. Even when he's emotional and he says something, it is exactly as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants him to say. And if I didn't have those narrations even, the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already tells us this in the Quran. وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. That he does not say anything from his own nafs. Everything he says is nothing except revelation. And the manner, the grammar, the logic of the wording here is you have a negation and then an exception. Just like in the kalma we have a negation and then the exception. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha, the negation. There is nothing to be worshipped. Illallah is the exception. Allah is the exception. The emphasis when in a statement like that is on the exception. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he doesn't say anything from his own self. Everything he says is nothing except revelation. So the exception, he is the exception. And everything he says falls into that exception that is all under revelation. So again, when he says something, this is not just what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants him to say, but it is exactly what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves for him to say. Exactly as he loves for him to say it. And this, we could go on about this, but these are certain basic rules. So everything he says and everything he does sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is exactly as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants him and loves for him to say, and wants him and loves for him to do. To the extent that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, he says, وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِذْ رَمَيْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ رَمَى. You know, he threw some sand in Badr. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you didn't throw it when you threw it, but it was I who threw it. This is the lover telling his beloved that every action of yours is my action. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the perfect creation of the only perfect creator. And this isn't me saying this. Hassan bin Thabit says this in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam after asking permission from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to say something. And he says what? He says, خُلِقْتُ مُبَرًّا مِنْ كُلِّ عَيْبٍ, that you are created without any faults, without any shortcomings. So just when we talk about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and those associated with him, then we need to remember these things. You know, the subject of Karbala, the subject of Imam Hussein al-Islam, you know, it's a very difficult subject to talk about for two main reasons. One is that it is so broad and so vast. You know, there's so many ways of looking at it, proper ways of looking at it, and so many perspectives, because there are a lot of improper ways of looking at it as well. You know, you start going down one track and it just opens up so many other things. You know, and this is why Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti rahmatullahi alayhi, because of whom 9 million Hindus became Muslim. You know, and not because of whom, but 9 million Hindus accepted Islam at his hands. How many other millions became Muslim because of him? You know, who knows? You know, he says what? He says, Shah Ast Hussein, Badshah Ast Hussein. That Hussein is the leader, Hussein is the king. Deen Ast Hussein, Deen Pana Ast Hussein. Hussein is the Deen, and the Deen sought refuge in Hussein. And then the poem continues on. We might get to that later. Again, time is always a factor. For those who come here regularly, they know when time's up, I stop. So that's, you know, the broadness of it, of the subject itself, the proper part of the subject, you know, and then you have all the other things associated with it as well. The other reason, which is also connected to the first reason, that it's so difficult to talk about this is, you know, it's hard to talk about the atrocities that were committed against the ones that you love. This is why, you know, when the Sadat, those who are truly from that lineage, try to talk about it, it's very difficult for them. But that's the same reason as to why it should also be difficult for us. Because the love of Hassan and Hussein is not an option. And this is not a sunnah. It is a sunnah, you know, But it's not just a sunnah, because every fard is also sunnah. But this is a fard. This is an obligation, without which your iman means nothing. You can't even say that your iman is not complete. It just means nothing. Which is interesting, because there are those, because there's so many attacks upon what Imam Hussein al-Islam did, why he did it, how he did it. And these aren't new attacks. There's a scholar 950 years ago who in certain circles is considered, in many circles is considered very mainstream, who wrote that it is haram to talk about the atrocities against the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He talks about the atrocities against Bani Israel. He talks about the atrocities against, the people of the pit. He talks about atrocities against all of humanity. But when it comes to this subject, they say, oh no, this is haram. Because the king is telling them, this is what you have to say, because I got to keep my seat. Because when you start understanding the position of Imam Hussein al-Islam, all of the kings, their legs start shaking. And there's another one of this guy's, who I just talked about, his supporters, also considered a very mainstream scholar in 950 years ago, who wrote a tafsir. And in the tafsir, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, obey Allah and His Messenger, and ulil amri minkum, and those who have been appointed over you. He mentions a narration of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam talking about, that anyone who fights against the legitimate ruler, the Khalifa, his punishment is death. And so he mentions this, and then he goes on to say that Imam Hussein al-Islam was killed by his grandfather's own sword. That's the... again, these are considered mainstream scholars amongst very large groups. And when you look at these scholars' names, they have 100 titles before them and 100 titles after them. It's like today, you ask somebody's name, the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when they would ask him his name, he would say Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Even though he has all of the titles, and not just, and the titles he's given aren't just, titles. These days, you want a degree and, you go online and you get a degree and now you're a PhD and you got all these titles. You look at like doctors, and after their name, they have like, 100 different letters. I know because I'm in that field. 100 different letters, right? Given by whom? By the people. Every one of Rasulullah's title is given to him by whom? By Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every one of Imam Hussein al-Islam's titles. He is Ibn Rasulullah. Rasulullah referred to him as his own son. He is Sayyid al-Shabab al-Ahlul Jannah, the leader of the youth of Jannah. And remember, everyone who enters Jannah will be a youth. Doesn't matter how old you are when you die. When you enter Jannah, you're a youth. He is the leader of all of the youth of Jannah. He along with his brother Hassan. Alayhi salam. He is the one for whom Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, Al-Husaynu minni wa ana min al-Husayn. That Hussein is from me, and I am from Al-Husayn. This doesn't mean that he's his grandfather. That's not what he's talking about. As I said, they were created for him, from him. You know, in the hadith in Tirmidhi, he says, Al-Husaynu minni wa ana min al-Husayn. The hadith in Imam Bukhari's Adab al-Mufrad, he says, Al-Husaynu minni wa ana min. That I am from Hussein and he is from me. But he doesn't stop here. He says, أَحَبَّ اللَّهُ مَنْ أَحَبَّ الْحَسَنَ وَالْحُسَيْنَ سَبِطَانِ مِنَ الْأَسْبَاطِ. That Allah loves the one who loves Al-Hasan and Al-Husayn. Which also means the opposite, that Allah does not love the one who does not love Al-Hasan and Al-Husayn. He says, and they are two distinguished descendants among the descendants. Meaning all of his descendants are distinguished, but these two have a different distinction. He is the one who Rasulullah kissed on his lips. He is the one who rode the shoulders of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when Umar radiallahu anhu, he sees this, he says, what a beautiful ride. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, what a beautiful rider. All of the titles of Al-Hussein, they weren't given to him by you and me. They are given to him and certified for him by Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it doesn't matter what anybody else says, doesn't matter what his title is, what his position is, what school he graduated from, how many hadith he's memorized, how, he can read the Quran forwards and backwards. Doesn't matter. Hussein is Hussein. He is the blood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is a part of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, before he's born, the aunt of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who's also his sister-in-law, a double relation here, Fadl bint Harith. She's the sister of the wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Maymuna bint Harith. She is the wife of the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib. She sees the dream. I'm going to go through it very quickly because we've talked about this so many times. She sees the dream in which she sees a part of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam falling into her lap. A part of him is cut off and it falls into her lap. And she comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam the next day and she says, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I saw this dream that has upset me so much. I saw that a part of you is cut off and it falls into my lap. And he says that this is not a bad dream, this is a good dream. Because a son will be born in the house of Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha, my daughter, and you will be the first to hold him. And exactly as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, she is one of the midwives during the birth of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And she is the first to hold him. And when she's holding him, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam enters the house and he says, give me my son. And she says, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I've not cleaned him yet. And he says, do you think that the water of this world can purify him? He is already pure. Give me my son. And she hands him to him, and the first thing that he tastes from this world is the blessed saliva of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from the tongue of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hassan, it means beautiful. Who named him Hassan other than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And again, everything that comes from his lips, from his tongue, is revelation. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not, giving, like we name our kids and we don't know if they're going to live up to the name or not. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us to give our names and give our children good names. But again, we give the child a good name. We don't know if he's going to live up to it or not. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam names him beautiful. He is physically beautiful, but his character is beautiful. Because his character is in line with the character of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Again, the list of the honors and the status of Imam Hussein al-Islam. We all hear the story, we don't understand the story. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is making salat. Imam Hussein al-Islam comes into the masjid. He climbs on the shoulders of Rasulullah. This Imam Hussein al-Islam, both of them did this, but right now I'm talking about Imam Hussein al-Islam. The throne of Imam Hussein and Imam Hassan al-Islam are the shoulders of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If I'm on his shoulder, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam doesn't move. Sajda continues. To the extent that the companions now, because they're in sajda, they're wondering what's going on. Something has happened to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They look up. Their looking up does not break their salat because of whom they're looking at. They're looking at Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they see Imam Hussein al-Islam on his shoulders. And finally, he gets off, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam continues the salat. And they asked him, they said, Ya Rasulullah, why did you, lengthen the sajda so long? He says, Hussein was on my shoulders and I did not want to disturb him. This is Rasulullah, the messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, I did not want to disturb him. One interesting point here is that the companions, they said that they counted 72 Subhana Rabbi al-Ala. When we make sajda, the order is 3, 5, 7, And the order for the imam when he's leading the salat is don't lengthen it too much. Don't become a burden on those who are behind you, because you have old people and children that are praying behind you. There are multiple statements of Rasulullah telling the imams not to make it too long. And yet here the companions who were used to making sajda for a long time are wondering what's going on. And Rasulullah says, I did not want to disturb him. 72. Why 72? How many people went with him to Karbala? How many people left with him from Medina Munawwara to Karbala? 72. When the quota was up, Imam Hussein al-Islam says, fine, that's all I need, I'm going. That's when he left. Other time he comes into the masjid. He's 2 or 3. Rasulullah is giving the khutbah, Jummah khutbah. Imam Hussein al-Islam starts to fall. He leaves the khutbah and catches him, brings him up and sits him beside him, and finishes the khutbah. Khutbah is part of the salat. You don't leave something of a lesser position, of a higher position for something of a lower position, even in your salat. If you forget something that's, that gets into some technicalities which I don't have time for. So the importance wasn't the khutbah. The important thing was the comfort of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. For those who aren't aware, because again, as I said early on, there are those scholars who say that this is haram to talk about. And there's no shortage of those scholars. Just an overview of what happened in Karbala, and then I'm going to come back to a certain point. And there's a lot of background before this that we don't have time to cover. Imam Hassan al-Islam vacates the seat. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the Khilafah is for 30 years, after which will come a tyrant, or not tyrant, but a forceful monarchy. After which will come the age of tyrants, after which will come Imam Mahdi and Isa alayhi salam. So he specifies Khilafah for 30 years. And then the age of the kings, which ended with the Ottomans, and now we're in the age of the tyrants. Okay. If you add up the Khilafah of Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, radiallahu anhum, it's only 29 and a half years. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said 30 years. Imam Hassan al-Islam is selected as the Khalifa. His Khilafah is significant and unique on multiple levels. One of which is that his is the only Khilafah which was based on the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There was no other Khilafah, whether it was Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, or Ali, or them, where they said, oh, see, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said this, so you need to be the Khalifa. But with Imam Hassan al-Islam, because of the situation, because of the civil war that was going on, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said one day when he walked into the masjid, and he picks him up while he's giving the khutbah, again like Imam Hussein al-Islam, he picks him up, and these two are very difficult to distinguish. And that gets into a long other topic, and if I have time I'll come back to that. Remind me if I forget. But Imam Hassan al-Islam walks into the masjid, the Rasulullah leaves the khutbah, picks him up, brings him, sits him beside him, looks at him, looks at the people, looks at him, looks at the people, and then he says to the people that this son of mine, he is the Sayyid of men. He is the master of men. Because of him, there will be peace between two large groups of Muslims. He specifies 2 large groups of Muslims. There will be peace because of this son of mine. And so they said to him, says, you are the only one who can lead us now. Because Rasulullah said this, and you are the only one who can fulfill it. And he also knew that the Khilafah was for 30 years, so he finished 6 months. At the end of the 6 months, he didn't want to be part of a system that was not totally in line with the with the Khilafah of Rasulullah. So he says, I'm gone. He signs the peace treaty, and again, that gets into a long topic as far as the conditions of the treaty and everything. But he signs the treaty. He hands over the rule. People said he handed over the Khilafah. He didn't hand over the Khilafah because there was no Khilafah. Khilafah ended. 30 years was up. He handed over the rule to Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. Why did he do this? To save the blood of the Muslims. He knew that if he had fought, and he came to the battlefield in a position where his army would have overwhelmed the other army. But the other army was also Muslim, and he knew that there would be much bloodshed. And he did not want to spill the blood of the Muslims, so he walks away from an empire that covered 1/3 of the world at the time. From Sindh in the east, all the way to Morocco in the west, Azerbaijan and a little bit further toward the north, and down, all of Arabia and into parts of Africa. Kings and leaders today, and we see this, they'll have 1 million of their people killed just to gain an inch of land. Imam Hussein al-Islam walked away from this rule. Imam Hassan al-Islam walked away from this rule simply to save the blood of one Muslim. So he walks away. Muawiyah radiallahu anhu passes Rajab 22nd, 60-year Hijri. Yazid becomes the king. And we may get into the politics of that as well. Again, time. Yazid becomes the king. Imam Hussein al-Islam is in Medina Munawwara. Yazid let me put this simply. Nothing about him had anything to do with Islam. Nothing about him resembled anything that you could say was a Muslim. Let me just leave it at that for the moment. He sends word to Medina that specifically for three people: Hassan, Abdullah ibn Zubair, and Abdullah ibn Umar. Imam Hussein al-Islam, again, these two can become very hard to distinguish. And I'll make a statement here. You know, when Allah did not distinguish between the two of them, then who am I? But Imam Hussein al-Islam, Abdullah ibn Zubair, Abdullah ibn Umar, and at this time Abdullah ibn Abbas is in Makkah. And he said that because if these three were to accept him as leader, then all of Hijaz would accept him. So he sent word that they have to give allegiance to him. Abdullah ibn Zubair and Abdullah ibn Umar, when word came, they immediately left and went to Makkah. Imam Hussein al-Islam went to the court of Walid bin Utbah, who was the governor of Medina at the time. And he's told that, Muawiyah radiallahu has died, so he has passed. So he says, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And then he says that Yazid is the king and he wants you to give him allegiance. He says, it's not for someone like me to just give someone like him allegiance. Marwan, who is the wazir at that time, before he had been governor, he tells Walid, he says, you know what the orders are, so if he doesn't give allegiance, kill him. Imam Hussein al-Islam says, who's going to kill me? You going to kill me or you going to kill me? And he leaves. So when he leaves, he gets his family, he goes to the Rawda of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then he goes and visits his mother and his brother in Jannatul Baqi. And we can't even begin to imagine his condition. But he gathers the family and he goes to Makkah. In Makkah, he gets letters from Kufa because people of Kufa didn't want to give allegiance to Yazid. He says, come to us and we will support you. So he sends his cousin to go check there, see if how things are. He gets a letter from the cousin, Muslim bin Aqil, saying everything's good, come on. People are waiting for you. So he leaves. The companions that were in Makkah, they tell him, please don't go. And here it's not because they think he's doing anything wrong. They say, please don't go because we're afraid that the people of Kufa will betray you. We know what they did to your father and what they did to your brother. He says, I gotta go. I've got a different mission. So he sets out with 72. Then on the way, certain people join him. In the meantime, the governor of Makkah has been changed. Governor of Kufa has been changed. Yazid sends Ibn Ziyad. Even if you look at his history, the guy's not even legitimate. who was the governor of Basra, he sends him to Kufa and says, you take care of this for me. So he comes and he basically kills Muslim bin Aqil, imprisons all of those who were supporting Imam Hussein al-Islam. And like most people are sheep, so the rest of everybody else falls into line. Sends an army against Imam Hussein al-Islam, an army of 1,000, led by Hur bin Yazid, who was a man from Kufa. This is Hur, son of different Yazid, who comes, meets Imam Hussein al-Islam on the way. He says, I'm here to arrest you. He says, why are you going to arrest me? He says, because you're coming, you've revolted against the Islamic State. And he says, well, I was invited by the people of Kufa. He shows them the letters. He says, I didn't know anything about this. He says, well, I'm not going to arrest you. The orders are, to arrest you and bring you to Kufa, but I'm not going to arrest you. You're headed that way. We'll just walk beside you. Hur was a decent person. He makes all of his salat behind Imam Hussein al-Islam. They arrive in Karbala on the 2nd of Muharram. And in the meantime, you have more armies that have come. This is one point to understand. Why do you need all of these people against these people who aren't even coming to fight? You have 72, and then as I said, some people join them along the way. So at the most, maybe you have 100, maybe a little bit more than 100. For those who have some understanding of fighting arts, if you're doing hand-to-hand fight, one person really, 5 people, more than 5 people can't fight against one person. There's not enough room. It's just physics. There's not enough room there. Now, if you're fighting with swords, you can extend that out, so maybe you can say 10 people can fight against one person. But not more than that, because again, there's not enough room. Why do you need to send an army that will eventually become 22,000? And that's a conservative estimate, because there are some historians who say there were 30,000. This gets to the reality that falsehood understands the strength of truth. And as I was saying in Jummah, even today, even though we are a shell of what we should be, we look inside ourselves and we know that. It's no secret of our condition. Even today, when they come against us, how do they come against us? Coalition. Always a coalition. They never come by themselves. It's always, let's get the whole world against them. Here, Yazid understands this point. And he's not sending these armies just against anybody. He's sending these armies against Imam Hussein al-Salam, the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the protector of Islam. So he understands this, and this is why army after army after army. Until finally, on the 10th, they attack. They kill all of those initially that were with him, who had come with him. And then the family starts to fight. And if I have time, we'll get into this later. But I want to come back to something now. Because there are a lot of people these days, these are things in the history books. This is just history. And that's how, when it suits them, then they'll pull out the history book and they put that above the hadith and the Quran. When it suits them. And when it doesn't suit them, this is just from the history books. But the truth is that this isn't from the history books. This is from the Quran and the Sunnah. You know? When I look at, there is a narration, there is a hadith, in which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is in the house of his wife, Bibi Salma, radiallahu anha. And Jibreel alayhi salam comes with another angel. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells his wife, Bibi Salma, the mother of the believers, radiallahu anha, stand at the door and don't let anybody in. This is a closed door meeting. That's what he's talking about. Closed door meeting, secret meeting, no one else is to come in. The other angel that was with him was the angel of rain. And that's important to note. And this is mentioned in the hadith. This is an angel that had never come on the surface of the earth before this time. This is the only time that that angel comes to the surface of the earth, is to come and meet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But he's coming for a specific meeting, for a specific reason. So as soon as Salma gets to the door, Imam Hussein as-salam comes. And he at this time is, again, 3 or 4. Imam Hussein as-salam was born on the 3rd of Shaban. 3rd of Shaban, the year 4th Hijri. Okay. So he's 11 or 10 and a half months younger than his older brother Imam Hassan, who was born on the 15th of Ramadan, 3rd year of Hijri. So Imam Hussein as-salam comes, and Bibi Salma says, Rasulullah says no one can come in. He says, this is the house of my grandfather. He gets in. Bigger people, it's hard to stop someone smaller than you if they want to get through your feet or get around you. So he pops right in. Rasulullah looks at him, and Jibreel as-salam looks at him, and Jibreel as-salam, he asks Rasulullah, do you love him? He says, yes. There's a hadith in Tirmizi where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says that whoever loves me sallallahu alaihi wasallam and loves Al-Hasan and Hussein and loves their father and loves their mother will be with us in Jannah. And doesn't mean with us in Jannah meaning that they will be in Jannah one place and you will be in Jannah someplace else, that their lovers will be someplace else. He says they will be darajati, their daraja, their status or their level and position will be with us. This is the only thing that can give us the status of Rasulullah in Jannah. To be with him, truly be with him in Jannah, is that love. There is no other action. There's nothing else that will do that. And so Jibreel as-salam, when he says, do you love him? He says, yes. He says, your ummah, people from your ummah will kill him. On the banks of beside the banks of the Euphrates. Tells them where it is, specifically. And he says, and if you wish, I can bring some of the dirt or the sand from that place for you to smell. And he says, yes. And Jibreel as-salam reaches out and brings this red clay, which the Rasulullah takes, and he smells it, and he gives it when Bibi Salma, when the meeting is over, he gives this to Bibi Salma and he hands it to her and he says, keep this safe, because when it turns to blood, you will know that they have killed my son, Hussein. Interesting point here. At that time, she was the oldest wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He could have given it to his youngest wife, Aisha Siddiqa. He could have given it to his daughter, Bibi Fatima Salamullah alayha, who wasn't very old either. To the mother of Imam Hussein. But he didn't give it to either one of them. He gave it to her. She is the only one of the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the daughter, because Fatima sallallahu alayhi passed 6 months after. But the oldest wife at that time is the only one who was still alive at the time of Karbala. This is the knowledge of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, there's a discussion that was going on online, and the question was, did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam know that Karbala would happen? And this is that group, who adhere to, we shouldn't talk about this. This is the Shia thing. Karbala is a Shia thing. And of course, this is also that group that say that he didn't know things. So anyway, in the answering of that question, the way they answered it is, well, if he knew, then it had to be through revelation, which is true, but the way it's said is something different. Everything about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is revelation. But the arrogance of the statement of, if he knew, then it had to be through revelation, and I know all of what revelation was. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, he says, أوحى فما عبده يوحى بما عبده أوحى بما عبده أوحى. Surah Najm. أوحى بما عبده أوحى. That I revealed on my servant whatever I revealed. Who am I to say what he revealed? This is the arrogance like shaitan. Against Adam alayhi salam. What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? Aba wastakbara, when he refused to bow. He says, Aba wastakbara, he refused and he was arrogant. Same thing against Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But then they bring out these narrations. They only bring 3 of them out. All 3 of them are in Musnad Ahmad, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal's Musnad. Of course, the assumption, because the way things are portrayed is, Imam Ahmad, his Musnad, he's a faqih, he's not a muhaddis. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal is the teacher of Imam Bukhari, the direct teacher of Imam Bukhari. He is the direct teacher of Imam Muslim. And he's the indirect teacher of all of the other muhaddiseen. He is the one who taught Imam Bukhari how to be a muhaddith. So, in that, they take one hadith in which Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh, on his way to Safin, of course he's passing through Nineveh, which is Karbala, and he stops there, and he says, "Be patient, O Abu Abdullah." Abu Abdullah is the kunya of Imam Hussein al-Islam. He says, "Be patient, O Abu Abdullah." And the companion with him says, "Why are you saying this?" And he says that one day I walked in on a Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his eyes were full of tears. And he says that Jibreel came and he said this to me. And I can't help these tears. So when they analyzed the hadith, they said, see, this one guy here in the chain, he's not known, he's not well known. Ibn Hibban says, yeah, he's trustworthy, but Dhahabi says that he doesn't know about him. So see, it's weak because of that. Which, fine, okay, fine, you say that. But then the next hadith, which basically is saying the same thing, different chain of narrators. Now they pick one guy and they say, see, this guy, he was truthful, but his memory wasn't that good. So it's weak, so fine. And then the next hadith, again, which all these 3 are in Imam Ahmad's Musnad, again, basically saying the same thing, different chain of narrators. They say, well, this chain, all of the narrators are thiqah. They are the same narrators. And, I'm getting technical here, but they say the same narrators that are that Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim accept. Okay. But the initial narrator says he doesn't remember whether he heard this from Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu or from Salma radiallahu. So because of that. But then in the end they say, well, if you take them collectively, then you have, but that's all he knew. Again, like they know what he knew. Okay. They don't mention the hadith in Imam Hakim's Mustadrak. You have basically the same hadith through different narrators, Imam Hakim's Mustadrak. And for those who don't know, Imam Hakim, rather in the science of hadith, you have terminology like Hafiz ibn Kathir, Hafiz ibn Hajar. Hafiz is someone who's memorized 100,000 hadiths. You have Hujjah. Hujjah is someone who's memorized 300,000 hadiths. Hakim is someone who's memorized 1.2 million hadiths. Okay, so here maybe the content is the same, but you got different narrators. Okay, Hakim's Mustadrak, Imam Bukhari, he said that he memorized 600,000 hadiths in one narration, another narration 1 million, which may mean that when he said the first one it was 600,000, and then he memorized more, and now he's 1 million. Okay, which 200,000, according to Imam Bukhari, are sahih. If you add up all of the hadiths that Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi wrote down in his Sahih, in Adab al-Mafrud, in all of the other books that he wrote, you don't get anywhere near 100,000. Imam Hakim wrote Mustadrak, because what he did was he collected all of these narrations, because if I look at Imam Bukhari had his teachers, and then he had his students. So his teachers also narrated to other students, and he narrated to his students things that he didn't write down, because people don't understand. At that time, paper was a commodity. The Muslim had just learned how to make paper from the Chinese. So it's not like today, like everything's paper product now. Use it and trash it. Paper was not easy to find. Most of the writings at that time were still being done on skin, tanned skin, and camel shoulder blades. So Imam Hakim, he looks at all of these narrators that are the same narrators as in Bukhari and Muslim, and then he compiles Mustadrak based off of those narrators. So they're all say according to the criteria of Bukhari and Muslim. He narrates this, and also the fact that that sand or that dirt became blood. Imam Bayhaqi narrates it. Different narrators, same content. Multiple books. One interesting, and the thing is here, when Rasulullah SAW is talking about this to Jibreel al-Islam, and when other people entered upon him and they see this, he talks about this. And as he's talking about this, tears are rolling down his blessed cheeks. And he says to them, I cannot help this. This is love. Because there are those people today who say that it is haram to cry over Imam Hussein al-Islam. If you look at history is written after the fact. Pick up a history, it tells you what happened before. Here, Rasulullah SAW is talking about this before the fact. And so to cry, after listening to about the events of Karbala, to shed a tear, this is not mourning or something else. This is the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
So anyone who says that, oh, this is haram, he has no understanding of the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The other interesting point here is, when a crime is committed, the evidence for that crime is collected after the crime. How do you collect the evidence of a crime before the crime? Here, the evidence of the crime, what is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam smelling from that dirt? He is smelling the blood, sweat, and tears of Imam Hussein al-Islam and all of those with him. He is smelling that fragrance. So the evidence is being presented in the court of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam even before the crime is committed. And as I said, this is a very difficult topic because it's so broad. And truly all of Islam is contained within it. You start looking, there's some connection to everything. For those who come here regularly, a few years ago I started talking about Imam Hussein al-Islam, and I thought I'd be finished in about a month. And 6 months later, we still hadn't finished. So every Friday we'd be speaking about him, and 6 months later we were still going. And then certain other things came up, so I had to switch topics. But we literally didn't even scratch the surface. One of the reasons I'm mentioning some of these other things that people say is because, like these days, we see, somebody's burning the Quran. Everybody's up in arms. And they're shocked by it. When I see that, yeah, I'm upset by it, but it doesn't shock me. These are people who don't even respect their own book. Why should I expect them to respect my book? When they say something against Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, yeah, it upsets me, but it doesn't shock me. Because again, these are people who have no regard for their own, the people that they allegedly hold in esteem in their own religion. So why should I expect them to have any honor or respect for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? What annoys and irritates me, though, is when people cloaked as Muslims do the same thing, maybe not in that manner, but in a similar manner. When I see a wolf, I expect it to howl. That's what wolves do. When I see a lamb, or what looks like a lamb, and it starts howling, I'm kind of taken aback. But I also appreciate that, because at least it's telling me who it is. Because if it was baying, then I would still be confused. If the wolf knew how to bay, and then I'd be confused. So when you see people cloaked as Muslims try to downgrade the significance of what Imam Hussein al-Islam did, I'm thankful to them, because at least you're telling me who you are. Like they say here, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told us the criteria of a hypocrite. People talk about one or three, but they forget to talk about another one that's more significant. They tell you the hypocrite, when he speaks, he lies. When he promises, he breaks it. If you give him a trust, he violates it. This is a hypocrite.
But the one who has animosity to Ali and to Ahlul Bayt is also a hypocrite. And this is the criteria that Ibn Abbas and Abu Sayyid Khudri and various other companions of Rasulullah used. That's what they said. They said if we wanted to know who was who, we'd simply take the name of Ali. And simply by the expression on their faces, we would know who was who. If you took the name of Ali and the face lightened up, you know this is a believer. And you take the name of Ali or Ahlul Bayt, and then, you kind of see apprehension. You know who they are. And some people, they get upset. They, why are you talking against anybody? Well, why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talk about certain people in the Quran? Why did Rasulullah point out certain people? To keep us safe from them. So if I don't talk about certain, when you talk about the good, you have to talk about the bad. Because just like in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't just say, talk about the good. He talks about, when he talks about Musa alayhi salam, he talks about Fir'aun. When he talks about Namrud, he talks about, or when he talks about Ibrahim alayhi salam, he talks about Namrud. Not only this is the way you should be, but this is also the way you shouldn't be. In medical school, I learned more from professors that I thought were total idiots than some of my good professors, because I knew this isn't how I want to be. So, time's about up. I'm going to say some things, try to say some things rather quickly. There was a video a few years ago that they put out, Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia speaks truth about Yazid. They've since, I think they've taken it down. They themselves put it up and put the translation in there, even though the language is very clear. And but there are other clips of it that people copied, so you can find those still easily. And in that, he says that Imam Hussein al-Islam, this blind guy, who was the Grand Mufti until 99, he's saying, Abdullah ibn Zubair and Imam Hussein al-Islam were mistaken, because they didn't give allegiance to Yazid, because Yazid was the rightful ruler. And he goes, into what his concept of a rightful ruler is. The same thing, like I said, like the guy who said that Imam Hussein al-Islam was killed by his grandfather's own sword. Astaghfirullah. Same mindset, same ideology, same thought process. But again, this criteria that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told us, and the hadith is in Sahih Muslim, that I'm leaving behind two very heavy things. That if you stick to these two, then you will never be led astray. One is heavier than the other, and that is the Quran. And then he says, Ahl Bayti, itrati Ahl Bayti, my Ahlul Bayt, my lineage. There are those these days who, when they mention this hadith, they mention another hadith, which they don't mention this hadith, they mention the other hadith, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that I'm leaving two heavy things behind, the Quran and my Sunnah. If you look at that hadith and the chain, it's very weak. Not just mildly weak, it's very weak. This hadith, where it says the Quran and Itrati Ahl Bayt, is in Sahih Muslim, very strong chain. Those same people who, when you mention a hadith, they say, this is weak, are the ones who overlook the Sahih hadith because it doesn't fit their agenda, and pick the one that does. And he also says about his Ahlul Bayt, he says that the Quran and my Ahlul Bayt are like this, they will always be together until they meet me at the Hawd on the Day of Judgment. There is no understanding of the Quran without Ahlul Bayt. This is why when the army of Yazid came, 22,000, 500 of them were fuqaha, scholars of fiqh, rulings, the do's and the don'ts of Islam. Several hundred, if not thousands, were hafiz of Quran. And yet, Imam Hussein al-Islam is constantly going in front of them, addressing them, saying to them that you know who I am. And for those who don't know who I am, there are people amongst you who know who I am. Because this was still the age of the Sahaba, 61 Hijri. And he says, I am the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I am the one upon whom you send salawat in salat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. Your salat is not complete unless you do that. He makes sure that they know who he is. Not because he thinks that, if 5 amongst them defect, if even 1,000 amongst them defect, what differences was it going to make? But so on the day of judgment, they'd have no excuse. And when guidance is taken out of the heart, that person has no limits. This is why when they killed Imam Ali Aswad, 6 months old, he's holding him in his hand, saying, you're not giving me any water or anyone else any water. What do you have against him? What will he do to you? And as he's holding him, they shoot him with an arrow through his neck. They've killed off everyone. The only reason Imam Zain al-Abidin was left, or one of the reasons, of course Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted him spared for other things, is because he was sick, couldn't even stand. And afterwards, after they've killed them all, and they eventually killed Imam Hussein al-Islam while he's in sajda, because the fighting started in the morning, mid-morning. Those who had come with Imam Hussein al-Islam, they were killed first, because they went out first. Then Imam Hussein al-Islam led the family in Dhuhr Salat as Salatul Khawf. And then the family starts to go out one by one. His brothers, his cousins, his nephews, and his son. And after each one, he rides out and he picks them up and he brings them back and lays them beside the tent. With Imam Ali Asghar, when he brought him back, he buried him. Because he knew what was coming. Because they were going to run the horses over them. And if they had run their horses over Imam Ali Asghar, the 6-month-old child, nothing would be left. Again, they've killed them and they've beheaded them. And still they're not satisfied. But, these are the things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions. This is the thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions. This is وَلَنَبْلِيَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. And we will test you with something of fear and hunger and loss of wealth and loss of your life and your offspring. Thamarat, fruits, the fruits of your toil, that's your offspring. Everything that you can be tested with, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in this verse. Family makes a man a coward. Before you get married, I'll do anything. Then you get married and then you have children and now, This is a testament to the bravery and the patience of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. You look throughout history, people were tested with these 5 things, but never at once. You look in the Quran, the sacrifice of Ibrahim alayhi salam. He's tested with what? At one time he's tested with his offspring and with fear. Another time he's tested with fear. Another time he's tested with wealth. But never all together. When Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he is going to sacrifice his son in Surah Safat, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? He placed him how? Lil Jabin, on his forehead. Why did he place him on his forehead? For those who slaughter animals, you don't place them on their forehead when you're going to slaughter them. Why did he do that? He was given an ishara. He was pointing to something else to come later on. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَفَدَيْنَاهُمْ بِذِبْهٍ عَظِيمٍ, and we ransomed him, we replaced him, Ismail alayhi salam, with this great sacrifice. وَتَرَكْنَا عَلَيْهِ فِي الْآخِرِينَ, for the later generations. People, they say, oh no, it was the ram. The ram was sacrificed then. It wasn't postponed for later generations. And the sacrifice of the ram is not azim compared to the sacrifice of Ismail. He says azim. What do we say in Ruku? We say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. All of these are pointing toward the sacrifice of Rasulullah in Karbala. But in Karbala, what do we see? We see fear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala testing with fear. Hunger. They'd been hungry for 3 days. No water, no food. Wealth. Everything they had is gone. And these are not people who are poor. You look at the history of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, the amount of sadaqah and that he gave. Loss of your own life, again, that's not a big deal compared to the offspring. Yet he's sacrificing everything so that Islam reaches us. Hussein is Hussein. His status didn't become elevated because he became martyred. Martyrdom attained a different status because it became associated with him. Just like his grandfather, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In Surah Nur, Ayat Nur, you read the ayat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives an analogy of a lamp. That analogy is the analogy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he says in that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this lamp gives off light even if the flame doesn't touch it. That flame is the flame of Nabuwah, of prophethood. Prophethood did not elevate the status of Rasulullah. So Rasulullah's status was even beyond that. But prophethood became elevated because he was associated with it. This is why he said that I've been made the leader of the prophets, but there's no la fakhr. There's no pride in this. People think, oh, you shouldn't be proud. That's not what he's saying. You should be proud of your status. If you're not proud of being a Muslim, if you're not proud of that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made you amongst the ummah of Rasulullah, then your iman, what is your iman? Hussein didn't need to do what he did to increase his status. It simply gave us a glimpse into his status. He gave patience a new definition. He gave bravery a new definition. And we can never match that, but we should at least remember it. and try to honor it. Again, this is the one whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who was given all of these titles by Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it doesn't matter whether you're Hujjatul Islam or Shaykhul Islam or Shaykhul this or whatever else. Your status has nothing compared to the status of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. You know, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to understand and truly give us that love. You know, give us the love of Himself and the love of His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the love of Ahlul Bayt and the love of the Sahaba Ikram and the love of all of those whom they love. Because this is what Iman is. Time's up. I will end here, inshallah. We will make salam. We'll do salam and then dua, and then adhan for Maghrib, and then food, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina. Sí.
اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله صلى الله عليه وسلم. صلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا خير خلق الله. شاء أستسين بعد شاء أستسين دين أستسين ديني بانا أستسين صارت دا دست دار دست يزيد صارت دا دست دار دست يزيد حقق بنا إلهي لا أستسين لا إله أستسين لا إله أستسين. King is Hussein alayhi salam. King of kings is Hussein alayhi salam. Deen is Hussein alayhi salam. Deen took refuge of Hussein alayhi salam. He gave his head but not his hand to the cursed Yazid. Indeed, in fact, the reality of La ilaha is Hussein. Ya Sayyidina, Ya Imam Hussein, Ya Sayyidu Shuhada, Ya Sayyidu Shabab al-Jannah. O our Master, O Imam Hussein, O Chief of Martyrs, O Chief of the Youth of Jannah. Mirror of Imam al-Mubaligeen, son of the Emir of true Mujahideen, victorious lion of Allah, your father, the perfect flower, Queen of Jannah, your blessed mother. Not one to show his face in the face of oppression, it's no wonder you gave your head to the cursed Yazid, and with bride and bridle in hand on a heavenly steed, away did fly. Ya Sayyidina, Ya Imam Hussein, Ya Sayyidu Shuhada, Ya Sayyidu Shabab al-Jannah. O our Master, O Imam Hussein, O Chief of Martyrs, O Chief of the Youth of Jannah. Indeed, you are your father's son, two blessed beings, in reality one. As he sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Hussein is from me and I am from Hussein. Well, your lineage is pure from beginning to end. Ya Imam Hussein, you are a king, the descendant of our master, Sayyidina Insi wal Jan, chief of men and jinn, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, forebearer of true kings from the blessed lineage of Ahlul Bayt. No doubt you knew your fate so true. Saving ad-Din awaited you on the hallowed fields of Karbala. Ad-Din sought refuge when tyrants attacked, replacing your pure lineage with hearts so black. Allah made holy the valley of Tua when Musa alayhi salam beheld the burning bush. Are not the sands of Karbala made holy by the blood your family sacrificed, the lives given in response to your wish to keep pure our way? How can we not love you, O mirror of the Nur of Sayyidina Muhammad al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, O darling of Sayyidina Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, O pride of Asal al-Ghalib, Sayyidina Imam Ali, victorious son of Allah, O Savior of the true Islamic spirit. Your manner, countenance, spirit, second manifestation of Sawari Kainat, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, master of both the realms of existence, this world and the next. We cherish you, our hearts shed tears for you, of blood for you, honor your memory by remaining true to the message your blessed Jaddi passed down to you. The arms so strong that embrace you, the lips so sweet that kissed you, the cup of union passed down to you. Ya Imam Hussein, Ya Imam Hussein. You are our champion, the envy and objective of true believers, and master of young and old, if truth be told. Unmatched you are from then till now, a crown of light upon your brow. Our hand in your hand and our heads for you, our lives, our wives, and our children too. We sacrifice as we know, as we follow through, because cowardice in the face of oppression is the worst form of tyranny. Ya Sayyidina, Ya Imam Hussein, Ya Sayyidina Shada, Ya Sayyidina Imam Sirab Jannah. O our Master, O Imam Hussein, O Chief of Martyrs, O Chief of the Youth of Jannah. لي خمسة أتفي بها حر الوباء الحاتمة المصطفى ومطلع وبنهما الفاتمة. For me there are 5, for their sake the scorching fires of calamities are made cool. المصطفى صلى الله عليه وسلم والمطلع كرم الله تعالى وجهه وابناهما عليه الصلاة والسلام وفاطمة عليه السلام. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد آله وصحبه أجمعين وسلم تسليما كثيرا برحمتك يا الحمد لله.
Ya Rasulullah, salamun alayk. Ya Habiballah, salamun alayk. Ya Rasulullah, salamun alayk. Ya Habiballah, salamun نور ظاہر کی صورت پہ لاکھوں سلام، حسن باطن کی سیرت پہ لاکھوں سلام. آپ عین خدا ہے نہ غیر خدا، وحدت دارا حقیقت پہ لاکھوں سلام. حق نوا حق لکا حق ادا حق نما، حق کی عین مشیت پہ لاکھوں سلام. شجرہ انبیاء کا گل سرسبد، نوبہار رسالت پہ لاکھوں سلام. یا رسول اللہ سلام علیک. یا حبیب اللہ سلام علیک. سرور اصفیاء خاتم الانبیاء، نقش مہر نبوت پہ لاکھوں سلام. شمع جم رسل ہادی جزو کل، اس سے عادت ہدایت پہ لاکھوں سلام. شاہد ذات حال امم کے شہید، ایسی عینی شہادت پہ لاکھوں سلام. وصل کو سین ہے روت آئینہ، دید و دید خلوت پہ لاکھوں سلام. یا رسول اللہ سلام علیک. یا حبیب اللہ سلام علیک. کنز اسرار کے نور کا ہے امین، قلب مومن کی وسعت پہ لاکھوں سلام.
حق کے قہر و غضب پر ہے چھائی ہوئی، شان مہر و محبت پہ لاکھوں سلام، آل کی نیت پر ہزاروں درود، اور امامت ولایت پہ لاکھوں سلام، جس نے امت پر اولاد قربان کی، اس زعیم شفاعت پہ لاکھوں سلام، یا رسول اللہ سلام علیک، یا حبیب اللہ سلام علیک، حسن اخلاق جس کو ملا آپ کا، اس سزاوار رحمت پہ لاکھوں سلام، جانشی کربلا میں جو تھا آپ کا، اس کی عزم شہادت پہ لاکھوں سلام، جس سے قائم ہے دین، جس سے قائم جہاں، اس شفیع قیامت پہ لاکھوں سلام، جن کو حق نے کہا ہے عزیز عزیز، ان کے اصحاب و عزت پہ لاکھوں سلام، یا رسول اللہ سلام علیک، یا حبیب اللہ سلام علیک، یا رسول اللہ سلام علیک، یا حبیب اللہ سلام علیک۔
امام فرقان
دعا
انشاءاللہ۔
اے بھائی سے
In, by, and with Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. We seek protection in you from misleading and from being misled, from betraying and from being betrayed, from oppressing ourselves and from others oppressing us, from pulling others into ignorance and from being pulled into ignorance. O Allah, guide us among those whom you have guided. Preserve us among those whom you have preserved. Befriend us among those whom you have befriended. Bless us with what is lawful. Protect us from that is not lawful. Surely whoever you honor can never be disgraced. O Allah, we seek protection in you from a heart that has no faith, from a tongue that is not straight, from a mind that does not remember you, from knowledge that is not useful, from a soul that is ungrateful, and from a prayer that goes unanswered. Amen. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
There's some people that are breaking the fast, so give them a couple of minutes, inshallah.
Don't need to put your tablet somewhere else. Kids can take it. They don't know what my password is. You think so? Take your tablet. I have an Xbox. It's okay. I have an Xbox.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Straighten your rows with no gaps, inshallah. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim Malik Yawmiddin Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد الله أكبر سمع الله من حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. الله أكبر. سمع الله من حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى سيدنا اللهم اغفر واغفر تبارك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذريتنا ربنا تقبل دعاء. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. Ya Allah, give reward all of those who have taken part in this program, whether they're making food or eating the food or coming and joining and listening in any other aspect, and allow us to truly understand the status of the beloved Imam Hussein al-Islam and those who are with him, and allow us to allow him to intercede on our behalf in the day of judgment. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Just everybody's attention just for a few minutes. Inshallah, they're getting the food ready. Yeah, see? Imam Furqan brought these caps. Have sabr, which is patience. They are students that go and study in Senegal. So this is basically fundraising for them. They're $15 each. All the proceeds go to those students who are going to Senegal. His own sons study there. One of his grandsons is there. Almost Hafiz, inshallah. Hafiz, inshallah, will be finishing soon. So all of this, there are a few of these here. So if anybody would like to get one and donate the $15 to their cause, that would be good. And and the wording here is sabr. And this is one of the lessons from Karbala. Is sabr. And it's interesting. When, as we know, again, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew. Ali radhiyallahu knew. The Fatima salamullah alayha, they knew. But none of them told him, don't go. Nobody from the lineage of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him, don't go. They all told him, have patience. Go, do what you need to do, but have patience. Because they knew that this was to save this deen, so this is one of, again, sabr. And the sabr of Imam Hussein al-Islam is unquestionable, undeniable, unequaled. The other aspect of that also is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, إِن تَنْصُرُوا اللَّهَ يَنْصُرُكُمْ وَيُثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَكُمْ. That help Allah and Allah will help you. وَيُثَبِّتْ, some people translate this, and make your feet firm, but the wa here is an explanatory wa. He says, help Allah, Allah will help you by making your feet firm. So you don't move. When the time comes, you stand firm in your position. And again, we see this with Imam Hussein al-Islam. And this is why when you read the description of Imam Hussein Islam, Imam Hassan Islam from the chest up was a perfect image of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Imam Hussein Islam from the chest down was the perfect image of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Because those feet need to be firm in Karbala. With all of the atrocities being committed, he did not waver in the least. He could have simply given his hand in the hand of Yazid and said, I accept you as the leader. That's all he needed to do. But that would have been the end of Islam. Literally would have been the end of Islam. And this is why he said, how can someone like me give allegiance to someone like him? Because if he gave allegiance, then everybody else would have followed suit. So again, we need to keep all of these things in mind. So those, who would like to get one, they're here. Imam Furqan is sitting there in the back. So just, they're here, inshallah. Okay? Assalamu alaikum.
You tell me how much. Thank you very Let me get some If you don't mind, then pass the
Have a seat. Right?
White wine? Show me your white wine.
No, that's the video we showed. Oh, that was just for
Music in front of
But I guess he's not going to come to the first one.
Started.
Thank you.